Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're just going to let people trickle in a little bit before we get started. All right, folks, we're going to get started. So thank you for joining us. My name is Carmisha Huckleby, and I'm the Associate Director for Study Abroad. So I will be presenting along with my colleague, Isabelle Christ from the Office of Global Safety. But before we get started, we just want to get a feel for who's joining us today. So if you could just do the poll for us and let us know what year your student is at Vanderbilt before we get started, that would be great. Thank you. All right, so it looks like the votes are in here. So it looks like we have mostly parents of freshmen and sophomores joining us today with a few juniors. So that's very good information for us to know throughout the presentation. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. As I mentioned, my name is Carmisha Huckleby. I'm the Associate Director for Study Abroad at Vanderbilt. And my colleague Isabelle Christ will be joining us as well for like the second half of the presentation to talk about different things related to health and safety. And she's the Associate Director of Global Safety and Security. I also want to mention that the rest of our team is in the chat. So if you have any questions and answers, or sorry, any questions, feel free to add those to the chat. And we also incorporated some of the questions that were submitted during registration. So we'll try to cover a lot of those in the presentation as well. So first, I just want to talk a little bit about what study abroad is at Vanderbilt, how students can get involved, what they do, where they go, things like that. So in terms of who studies abroad at Vanderbilt, since it's a part of the Vanderbilt experience for many students, especially since about 50% of our students study abroad or did at some point before COVID, is something that we really like to highlight and talk about. So the number is in part is pretty high, mostly because we have a wide range of programs available in various countries. So we'll get into the specifics about that in a second. But any student pursuing any major can study abroad, even if they're taking very demanding courses. We have programs for engineering students, for example, pre-med students, and many more. So as long as students are working with us, they're academic advisors, talking to the faculty, and possibly financial aid if applicable, they should still be on track to graduate on time. We have tons of students who still stay on track, take the coursework abroad, come back and graduate on time. So with proper planning, specifically, usually a year in advance, students, if they're thinking about studying abroad, they're already talking to people just to sort of get a general idea of how it will fit into their academic plan. So since the applications open the semester prior to when they want to study abroad, planning out at least a year in advance and preferably earlier than that usually keeps them on track. So in terms of when students typically study abroad, at Vanderbilt, students can study abroad anytime after their first year at Vanderbilt. So whether they're first year students or transfer students, that will apply to them. So as I mentioned, the application process starts the semester before they actually travel abroad. So it means that they can apply after their first semester at Vanderbilt. So for most of our students, they typically come in to work with one of our advisors just to sort of figure out which programs are available, how it makes sense for them. And like I mentioned, they should start planning a year out if they can, because they're going to start applying a semester beforehand. But especially if students are considering going abroad for a full semester or a year rather than the summer, planning is key, especially since they may need visas and other things to go abroad. For our students, junior year is the most common time to study abroad, but we also see sophomores and even first semester seniors who are doing it as well. But we also like to make sure that students are keeping in mind that studying abroad as a senior could possibly delay their graduation, and it definitely will if the students want to go the final semester of their senior year. And they definitely need to talk to their academic advisors about that, because that, depending on, you know, what they're studying or their school, it may or may not be possible for them to do that. So for our students, they can study abroad for a full semester. They can go for an academic year. We also have Maymester programs where students can study abroad for 3 to 4 weeks with a faculty member. And they usually the Maymesters usually wrap up around early June. And then the summer programs really range from 3 to 12 weeks, depending on the program you select. So we have a ton of options for students. We have over 140 programs in over 45 countries from which to choose. So we pretty much have, you know, programs in every region. So if a student is interested in a particular place, they can come and talk to us and we can tell them about the options that we have available for them. And they can also find it on our website, which I'll talk about a bit later. In terms of our study abroad program partners, this is a question that a lot of students have. So Vanderbilt works with external partners to facilitate the study abroad experience. So our partners are resources for us and the students. So they help us with different things throughout the application process. So the students can get advisement from us and our study abroad providers in order to plan their experience. So they help with anything including questions about academics or the courses that are offered on site. They offer on-site support when students get there, including the housing arrangements. And all of our partners have gone through rigorous vetting in order to, and including with Vanderbilt faculty taking a look at the academics. And they've also been vetted by our Office of Global Safety at Vanderbilt, just to make sure that the programs are suitable for our students. So that's just a brief introduction in terms of the study abroad numbers and things like that. But we definitely want to talk a little bit more about focusing on the 3 key values that we hold related to study abroad at Vanderbilt. So the first thing that we value is making sure that our programs are accessible to all students, provided that they are willing to put in the work and take advantage of this experience. Because it's definitely a learning opportunity for them as well. And we also want to talk about making sure that the program is compelling for the students. It's supposed to involve transformative learning, and we want to do that with the guided principles of self-discovery, global citizenship, and personal growth. And then we also want to make sure that the program is as safe as we can make it. So first, we're going to talk a little bit more about how we look to make the programs accessible to all students. And there are 3 primary dimensions that we consider in this. So first, we want to make sure that the programs are academically accessible. We want to make sure that we have course offerings for students of all majors. So we work with Vanderbilt's undergraduate colleges to ensure that there's a wide range of programs and courses available, covering all the subjects from engineering to English and most other subjects as well. So since students are going to be considered in residence at Vanderbilt when they're studying abroad, and they can expect to earn a full credit load if they do a full semester, so that'd be 12 to 18 credits when they study abroad during the fall or spring term. We just want to make sure that they stay on track. And then for students who are considering summer programs, the credits are more variable depending on the length of the program and the number of hours that students will be in class. And the courses will count towards students' majors and minors, as long as they're, staying on track and progressing toward their degree. So with proper planning, students can and do study abroad and graduate on time. And we do have information on our website that helps students to see which courses are already pre-approved. And we have information on our website that allows students to submit additional courses for pre-approval if they don't see what they're looking for on the list. We also want to make sure the programs are financially accessible. So especially when it comes to, offering students a chance to spend a semester abroad. During the academic year, all programs are, like Vanderbilt, students are going to be paying tuition and fee, like Vanderbilt tuition, and their institutional aid can be applied to their study abroad experience. In addition to the tuition they're paying, it can be applied toward their experience. So this means that if your student studies abroad in the fall or spring, both their need-based and merit-based financial aid packages would apply to their study abroad. So there is an exception, which is federal work study, because it's not possible for the students to go abroad and complete their work study requirements abroad. In terms of summer, since that's an optional term at Vanderbilt and most other schools, regular financial aid does not apply for the summer, but because it's a pathway toward the Immersion Vanderbilt requirement, students have access to Immersion funding to supplement the costs. And of all the Immersion Vanderbilt funding available during the summer, a big portion of that is earmarked specifically for our summer and Maymester programs. So studying abroad during the summer is, a lot of the funding is need-based and it's awarded through a competitive application process. And there are people on our team who can help students if they're interested in applying for aid or any of our scholarships. And then if there are gaps in the ability for the students to, during the academic year or summer, they can work with our office and the Office of Financial Aid to figure out how to fill those gaps. In terms of the cost breakdown, we broke it down into a few different sections here. So we're starting off with the overall cost to study abroad. So as I mentioned, like if a student's receiving financial aid, that can be applied toward their program. And then students can apply for additional aid for the summer to sort of offset those costs. So there are going to be two buckets. There's what's billed through Vanderbilt. So that's the, the tuition and fees. And then you have all of the other out-of-pocket expenses. So for Vanderbilt, you're paying us for the tuition fees, health insurance, and then the other out-of-pocket expenses are also listed on our website. So you can get a general idea of those variable costs, such as flights and things like that. And then within everything that's billed through Vanderbilt, you can see that breakdown there and what the program fee includes. And then, a short list of what the out-of-pocket expenses could potentially be. And we have budget sheets on our website, so you can see the breakdown as well. And then in terms of supporting our students, we have, we want to make sure that we're meeting the students where they are. We have some students who are first-time travelers, so we want to make sure that we have resources available for them. We have different workshops and things like that through the year to support students who may have additional questions. And then we partner with other offices on campus to support students like first-time travelers, students with disabilities, students who have identity-based concerns, students who need support managing their medical or mental health care, international students, et cetera. And the most important things is that students get in touch with us as soon as possible to start planning. And if they have any concerns, we want to try to address those before they confirm which program they want to do, just to make sure they make an informed decision about the program that they're choosing. So we really want to help them figure out how to make it a reality for them and give them all the information necessary to make that decision. And one thing that we definitely like to highlight is that studying abroad is more than just traveling with friends. We believe that study abroad should offer compelling opportunities for students and learning should be at the forefront of that. So we work with the faculty and deans of our undergraduate colleges to just basically ensure that students have a wealth of opportunities, as I mentioned. And they're doing more than just taking classes and traveling when they're there. So we just want to make sure that it's meaningful to them, that they have that opportunity for cultural exchange, chance to build critical skills, access different perspectives on the world's problems and those sorts of things, and building growth opportunities essentially. Students can also do research, internships, volunteer opportunities while they're abroad. So there are just a lot of different options. And And we just want to make sure that study abroad is a vessel for self-discovery, personal growth, and just cultivating global citizenship as well. And then these are career building opportunities. So we want to make sure that students are able to work with us and, possibly career services, just to sort of articulate their experience and their growth and highlight that in such a way that, is attractive to future employers, for example. And another thing that we really focus on is just making sure that the students understand how to tie all of those in, because some students, may complete a final project that's related to the study abroad experience. So we just want to make sure they're highlighting things for potential employers, graduate school applications, and things like that. So given all of that context, I sort of want to walk you through a small sampling of examples of the kinds of compelling experiences that are available based on some things that students have done in the past. So for students, for example, who are interested in medicine, public health, global health, and related fields, we have a number of special opportunities in locations around the globe for them. So for example, in South Africa, students can explore health policy and barriers to access amid income inequalities, other challenges faced in South Africa. So in addition to visiting many institutions and learning directly from practitioners, they can also intern with a clinic, community organization, research organization, or an NGO. For students who are pursuing a mastery of language, for example, they have a lot of opportunities to immerse themselves in the language and daily life in another country. So the image that you're seeing here shows a family on the Spanish island of Palma de Mallorca, teaching Vanderbilt students how to make their favorite dish. So students can study Spanish in both Spain and Latin America, and of course, other languages as well, including but not limited to French, German, and Chinese, and more. We get a lot of questions in terms of engineering students specifically, so we wanted to make sure to include this. So as I mentioned, the questions that you submitted during registration, we tried to include the answers to most of those here. It is possible for students who are engineering majors to go abroad with proper planning. So currently, in terms of numbers, we have about 30% of engineering students who are studying abroad by the time they graduate, or at least historically, that's how it's been. And we're lucky to have a strong collaborative, relationship with the engineering school to make sure that students still have options that are available to them and they stay on track. So most students can find engineering coursework in English, which allows them to, complete their degree requirements on time. So it's really all about proper planning. So some of the locations that where students can take engineering courses include Siena, Italy, Prague, Czech Republic, Stockholm, Sweden, Madrid, Spain, and a few locations in the UK, Ireland, New Zealand, and Singapore. And we're always, making sure that we have enough course offerings, and if we don't, we may consider adding additional programs in the future. So in terms of education, for example, in Denmark, education is approached very differently than it is here in the US. And this could be from basic philosophy to funding to classroom practices. So a practicum in a school or daycare center is an option sometimes for students, and it provides them the opportunity to learn about these experiences and how they work in real life, and to just learn how to contribute to professional practice in the cross-cultural context. So I hope that these different samples give you sort of a general sense of the deep learning and career preparation that's possible through study abroad. So in terms of the typical components of study abroad programs, we broke it into 4 different sections, but you have your program arranged housing. So for most of our programs, our study abroad providers find housing for students. They do the health and safety assessments to make sure that they're safe for the students. And for most of these programs, this is going to be required housing. So when students are considering what kinds of study abroad programs they want to do, they need to consider, do I want to stay with the host family or do a homestay? Do I want to, stay in a dorm or apartment? and make sure that they're reading everything on the website to understand what's possible. And if the program does not have the kind of housing that they want, then they probably would need to select another program that's more suitable for their needs. But for pretty much all of our programs, they're going to be in program arranged housing. A lot of people ask questions about independent housing, and that's a very rare case when that can happen. So students really need to keep that in mind. Another component, of course, would be the coursework at a university or a study center, or it could be a hybrid situation. So for some of our students, they'll go to a local university and take classes there with other students. Some programs have a more study center structure where they're actually not in class at a university, but they're at a study center with other students from other countries. And then there are hybrid models where they can be at a university and take classes at a study center. So this is really like, these are the things that students need to consider, because sometimes students want a university setting and then sometimes they want like a smaller setting. So it really helps them to determine which program might be suitable for them if they know how, like what kind of environment they want to learn in. There's also, as I mentioned, the on-site orientation and staff support. So we do pre-departure orientations here. It covers the health and safety, you know, what to pack, those sorts of things, cultural things to expect when you get there. And then when students get on site, they can have another orientation in country just to make sure they get to know the staff, get to learn things about where they're studying and additional cultural information. And then when it comes to experiential learning activities, some programs have different field trips or study tours or internships research built into the cost of the program to give students that opportunity for experiential learning. So in keeping in mind Vanderbilt's motto, Dare to Grow, I also want to just take a moment to highlight study abroad's potential for personal growth. So 97% of the students that return who studied abroad tell us that their experiences overseas help them to develop confidence and independence. And this is something that's very key. And these skills, the skills that students are gaining, of course, while they're studying abroad are increasingly like in demand for in the workforce. Additionally, nationwide, 80% of study abroad participants indicate that studying abroad helped them develop confidence in their skills as they tackled their first job out of school. So the work that we're doing is very important, and we definitely want to work together with families to make sure that we're helping students to dare to grow. And lastly, I just want to talk a little bit briefly about the logistics that students will encounter and how our office and you as parents and families can help to support them in their study abroad journeys. So students who study abroad in the spring are typically slightly more stressed in terms of preparing the students that study abroad in the fall due to the compressed time frame. So this is something that we like to highlight, and I have another slide on this just to sort of give you an idea of like fall versus spring. And of course, students can study abroad through the spring, but it really takes a lot of proper planning just because the turnover time between, you know, fall and spring is pretty quick. And so that's something that we like to keep in mind. We already talked a little bit about how proper planning is really what's going to help the students, and it can be challenging for them because they're still managing classes and things like that while they're trying to figure out like which program should I choose, how does the application process work, do I need a visa, do I need to apply for a passport, and just sort of trying to make sure they're doing what's best academically for them, as opposed to just choosing a program that might work for their friends academically but not, you know, not necessarily for them. So we're here to guide students through this process, and we really encourage parents to let the students be experts on this journey and work with us and other, you know, people on campus to help them through the process. In terms of credits and grades, this is just sort of a breakdown of things that that students should consider. They're going to earn study abroad or study away credit when they're going on these programs that fulfill their degree requirements. None of these programs, like students are not allowed to do pass fail. They're going to get a letter grade. And the grades will show up on their transcript, but it's not factored into their GPA. But it is good, is good to note that if a student is doing like a pre-health sort of program, pre-med, depending on like the schools they're applying to in the future, they may actually use those grades from the study abroad program to sort of recalculate the student's GPA. So you'll see there's an external section on the student's transcript where they'll see the study abroad grades, but it's just not factored in to Vanderbilt GPA. In terms of the study abroad timeline, this chart just gives you sort of a general idea of how the process goes. And for programs that are a little more lengthy in terms of visa processes, if students need a visa, like Spain, Italy, and France, we recommend planning, you know, any international travel to occur before the visa application cycle opens, which is about 90 days before the program start date. But if a student's going in spring, for any of these lengthy processes with visas, we recommend against planning international travel between the study abroad application all the way up through the program start date, because you have to surrender your passport and your visa the visa will go into the passport. So the turnaround, because of the turnaround time of it, you just don't want to risk it. As I mentioned earlier, sometimes for spring, like whilst a lot of students may want to go for spring, there are also advantages for studying abroad in the fall that we want to highlight, including less competition. So right now, less students apply during the fall. So if there is a program that potentially has a cap to it, this will be less of an issue at the moment for fall because less students apply during that semester. I already highlighted the information about the longer lead time for visa applications and pre-departure planning, because you have the whole summer. For example, if you're going for the fall, you may have a longer period of time to prepare for the fall semester than you do for the spring. There's a better staff to student ratio because if a lot of students are already going for the spring, like shifting to the fall, for example, gives you an opportunity to have a lot, more contact with the staff in smaller class sizes potentially, and things like that. So you get a lot more personalized support. Weather, is a factor. So depending on the country where you're going, the weather might be a little better. So that's always an incentive. And then Vanderbilt has an early registration perk for students for the following spring term if they're considering going for the fall. And then it could potentially lead to lower costs as well for a variety of factors, but one being, for a lot of students, like one of our most popular continents where students go is Europe. And of course, there are, all the programs are different and the culture is different and things like that. But in terms of the academic calendar, for a lot of the schools in Europe, the semesters are going to be longer in the spring. So when you're thinking about the costs, of course, you'll be paying like Vanderbilt tuition, but if the program is longer, you'll need housing for longer. Maybe there are a couple more things that are built into the program based on the length of time. The overall cost could potentially be lower if you're going for the fall. So before I pass everything over to Isabelle, I just want to mention how you can support your student through this process. So if they're not already considering studying abroad, you might want to encourage them to do so if you think it's something that is applicable to them. And definitely support students in taking ownership of their study abroad planning, because they will be the ones going abroad, and they will need to learn how to navigate all of these different things throughout the process. And just making sure that they understand that one of the goals of studying abroad is to spend time with people, from different backgrounds, different cultures, and that is, it's a great opportunity to do so. While they can do that here in the States, they can also do that abroad. And just helping them think through why they're going abroad. What do they want to get out of the experience? Is it, personal growth? Is it something related to their future career? Is it a little bit of both? Just helping them, making sure that the program they choose makes sense for them. And just actively planning for how they will care for their health and wellness abroad as well. I think that's very key. Okay, so now I'm gonna pass it over to Isabelle.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for your time here. I know we're running low on time, so I see a lot of really great questions coming through, and our wonderful team answering the questions while Karmisha and I are speaking. So Karmisha, you could go to the next slide. So this is the current Office of Global Safety, the Global Safety and Security team. We have me, I'm the Associate Director of Global Safety and Security, and my wonderful colleague, Erin Beeman, is the coordinator for Global Safety and Security. And you have our addresses for email and for the website. Go ahead to the next slide. So the way that we support students, there are sort of three big buckets. One is providing the 24/7, 365 safety-related guidance and assistance, responding to emergency and crisis issues abroad, connecting to relevant overseas and on-campus resources to ensure continuity of care and response, monitor relevant security updates and alerts, and health updates and alerts through our international security provider, appropriate government agencies, and obviously the folks that are on the ground. We also provide, and this is where we interact with our students the most, providing individualized health and safety advising. So providing travel consultations for undergraduate students, graduate student staff, and faculty, because our office does serve more than just the undergraduate student population. Topics that we cover or can cover include mental health support, continued care plans, resilient travel, identities abroad, security situations. And we coordinate the use of Vanderbilt's International Health Insurance Plan for our travelers abroad. In addition to that, sort of more behind the scenes, we do conduct in-person site assessments, including careful review of all relevant program and community resources and processes. We make those connections to the on-site staff, provide country information briefs covering health, safety, and security topics, which can be related to identity, mental health resources, safe travel, etc. And we assess health and safety of prospective programs. So Vanderbilt's considering adding programs on. That is one thing that we'll do, is look into the program and if it meets our standards as far as health and safety. Can we move on to the next one? So I want to talk a little bit about global safety resources. These are the three main ones. All study abroad students are enrolled in our GeoBlue, which is Vanderbilt's International Health Insurance Plan. So if a student is participating on an approved study abroad program, the study abroad office will actually enroll the students in the plan. So students wouldn't, in that case, need to enroll themselves. Students who would be traveling on, say, a student organization group travel, then that would be, the students would have to enroll themselves. Nice thing about GeoBlue is that they are more comprehensive than a lot of plans, even as far as domestic plans. You can file claims from overseas. You can work with GeoBlue to find appropriate doctors, clinics, have access to their online resources. And the coverage does apply only for the dates of travel, but they do apply anywhere around the world except for the US. Because once the students come back to the US, then their domestic insurance takes over. We have Vanderbilt's International Security Provider and their travel registration. So all travelers, including our students, are required to register their travel with Vanderbilt's International Security Provider. So their flights. So if they're flying from Nashville to New York, New York to Frankfurt, Frankfurt to South Africa, all those legs of travel would need to be registered with our international security provider. And the reason for that is that we want to make sure we know where our students are and that we have that the international security provider knows where they are, so that we can work together to identify where students are and if they're in an area where we need to have crisis support. So that's a very important piece. The students who are on an approved study abroad program will receive those instructions in their study abroad application, in their Vanderbilt study abroad application. And then for all Vanderbilt travelers, we have the Vanderbilt Incident Response for Travel, or VERT. This is the 24/7 response, the emergency and crisis line for Vanderbilt students who are traveling abroad, and any Vanderbilt traveler. So in an emergency, and we identify in the pre-departure orientations, we do identify with students what is considered an emergency and what is not. In an emergency, students can call this number, and for non-emergency assistance, but that still needs a response within 24 hours, we have the VERT at vanderbilt.edu email address. So those are some main areas. So one thing that we really ask for our students and families to partner together on is planning for wellness abroad. We want our students to be proactive about their healthcare, talking with their current providers about a continuing care plan. So if a student is currently in physical therapy and needs to continue physical therapy while they're abroad, then that is something that we would want the students to be thinking about and planning ahead for. Because if they need, let's say, 8 weeks of physical therapy and they're only in week 3 before they leave, they'll need to identify a provider on site. And that is something that we can help them with. So that continuing care plan, if they're needing continuing counseling, those are all areas that we help with. Then other things to be thinking about when sort of thinking ahead to that continuing care plan, we've got prescriptions, making sure you have enough medications for your time abroad, and any other thing that helps keep you healthy at home. Those are all things that we need our students to be thinking about and making sure that they have in place before they go abroad. We strongly encourage that our students disclose any physical or mental health conditions to the program provider. They can submit that information to us as well. But at least at minimum, the program provider, those are the people on the ground, they're the ones that will need that information to be better able to assist our students in case of need. We do want and encourage our students to sort of have that pre-departure check-in with their providers, so medical, dental, any other care providers, just to have that baseline check-in and checkup before departure, so that if there's anything that needs to be taken care of beforehand, any new medications, those can be done beforehand. And obviously, we don't want our students to wait to the last minute to do this. We want them to have enough time and not be stressed, so they have all this taken care of ahead of time. And one of the easiest ways to get those checkups is obviously working with our student health center and primary care provider. But if the student is only going back, say at Thanksgiving and there are no appointments available with their primary care provider, then perhaps working with student health is going to be the better option there. We do encourage our students to, again, review information, be proactive about learning about their program and thinking about what they need to be successful when they're abroad. You go ahead. All right. So something to keep in mind, and part of the pre-departure planning is that we do have amazing resources on campus for our students. And so again, with that continuing care plan, thinking about what a student needs to be successful, because study abroad will stretch students' comfort zones, and some students will find that harder than others. And so if a student is struggling here, then that is not going to get better abroad. And so we do want our students to make sure that they're reaching out to all resources ahead of time to have a game plan for thinking about what if scenarios, like, what if I have you know, a 15-minute commute because I'm going to be living in a big city. So it's nice to have someone that you can talk through that as far as, you know, how am I going to deal with this? And it makes me very uncomfortable. And so you have these thought partners in these on-campus resources. And really the best sort of first step is reaching out to the student care coordination. Folks, they are, I think they're the ones that really, they'll meet with a student, sort of figure out what the student is concerned about or wants to learn more about, and then help connect the students to these other resources. And I've listed below a few other resources that our students may want to access while they're during their time at Vanderbilt. So student access services, if a student has academic or physical accommodations that are already registered with Vanderbilt or are not yet registered with Vanderbilt, and they're concerned about having accommodations abroad to help them be successful, then definitely we would want the student to reach out to Student Access Services to get the documentation that they would need to send to the program provider. And again, we want our students to be planning this earlier, because the earlier they can get those accommodation needs sent to the program, the easier it will be for the program to verify that they can accommodate those needs. We got the Student Health Center, as I mentioned before, that they do have travel appointments. And again, we want students to be thinking about that and not waiting again to the last minute to meet with student health. And if you have questions about that, students can reach out to our study abroad colleagues or to our office. We also have the University Counseling Center, which is a wonderful resource, and also the Center for Student Wellbeing. And all of those are listed there. I've included the websites as well as the student care coordination, which will be very helpful for students navigating resources on campus. Okay, we can move on. All right. Am I doing this one?
I could chime in. Thank you, Isabelle. Thank you, Isabelle. Okay, so we just wanted to wrap up by giving you a few next steps. So if you're working with your student to plan this process, just make sure they're meeting with their academic advisor to understand how all of these different opportunities apply toward their major and minor. They can join our team every Monday. We have an overview session in our office, so students can stop in and learn more about like Study Abroad 101, essentially, if they're not joining you for this webinar. They can meet with one of our study abroad advisors who focus on different regions and different programs, just to get a general idea of how the programs we offer could apply toward their major or minor. And if students are interested in learning about summer funding, that information is available on our website, but we also have people in the Office of Experiential Learning and Immersion Vanderbilt who can offer additional support and guidance throughout the process of applying for funding. And then just starting with our website is really good because we have information on there, and also familiarizing themselves with the Office of Global Safety's resources to make sure they know what support is available here on the ground, as well as when they go abroad. Okay. So I saw that the chat was pretty live in terms of the Q&A. So I just want to give everybody another moment or two to enter any additional questions they might have. And it seems like my colleagues are already answering those questions for you. And if you have any other questions, you can definitely reach out to us directly as well. And I know the parent and family team are gonna send you a follow-up email with our contact information, so you can reach out to us with any additional things that you may wanna ask. So I'm just gonna look through the chat here and see what's not already being answered.
Ramisha, there's
I will
a
go back to
request to go back to the previous slide.
Sure, yep. Okay. Yeah, so let me just take another peek to see what else is here. I don't, someone's asking, I'm going to answer this one live about the percentage of male students who go abroad for the semester. I don't have that particular information, but In terms of underrepresentation, for example, there was an initiative between 2015 and 2020, the IIE, like there was an initial, it was called Generation Study Abroad, offered through IIE. And basically the initiative was, or the goal for schools that signed on to that initiative was to double the number of underrepresented students within study abroad to go abroad within that 5-year period. So males are actually considered underrepresented within study abroad because like women typically study abroad more than men at this time. So I don't know the specifics, but I know that women study abroad more than men. And that data could possibly be pulled up. So it's just not in front of me right now.
Yeah. I do want to add just one bit on the health and safety side. One of the reasons that we really encourage our students to plan ahead, take ownership of their experience and sort of think ahead about those what ifs, is that we have post-pandemic really seen a decrease in our students' resilience. Events that might happen. So for example, a student has to commute, London, they have to commute 50 minutes to get to their university and classes. I think that is normal in a big city. But I think a lot of our students are just not, they're just not ready for that. They're not very resilient in getting outside of their comfort zone enough to accept that as part of the program. So we want our students to really think about what it is they want out of the program, what are they concerned about, and where their expectations are versus where the reality is. And we are all here, our study abroad colleagues and our office are here to help students think about that, as well as those other Vanderbilt resources that I listed in the slides. We want our students to have a successful time abroad, but we realize that really in the last few years, this lessening of resilience with our students, I think is really having an impact. And so we really do want our students to be proactive in planning ahead.
Okay, so I definitely want to be respectful of everybody's time. I see there are a few more questions that are being answered by my colleagues in the chat. So if we don't get to you, we definitely want you to reach out to us. So we definitely appreciate everybody for joining us. I'm going to give it, just like maybe one more minute for them to finish out those questions that are already in progress. But then after that, I believe we will wrap up. So yeah, I see a few more questions here. And students can study abroad. If they plan, I see a question about whether students can study abroad more than once. With proper planning, it may be possible for students. So yes, that's something that some students do.
Right. I see a question about spring break travel. It really depends. There are an increasing number of travel embedded courses at Vanderbilt that will often have travel over a fall break or spring break. But the students would need to be registered for the course at the beginning of the semester for registration. And so that will vary. You also have, and those are the travel embedded courses will be faculty led. And then you also have student organizations who may travel as well with groups over spring break. And so those are different, and depending on what it is, it depends, what it is, which office you would contact for questions on that one. And I see Erin's adding to that as well.
I also see someone asked about whether this will be shared. So we're recording this. So this is available to you after, if you need to reference this video after we finish, then you'll be able to watch the video again after it's sent out. All right. Okay, so we're going to wrap. Oh wait, I see Erin's typing. Tyler's typing. Okay. Okay, so yeah, after, let's see, I think, yeah, once Erin answers the question that she's answering right now, we're going to wrap up. And please feel free to send us any additional questions after the webinar. I really hope this was helpful for everyone. We tried to cover pretty much everything that was listed on the registration list, our list of questions, but I know that some of them are a bit more specific. So it might be like major specific or specific to your student. So we always want to encourage students to come in and talk with us just so we can talk to them, because some of this stuff is really like a case by case situation. So if we didn't get to you, it might be better to just follow up with us about it, because it gets very, you know, in the details sometimes. Yeah, and it could be specific to your student's major. And some students just really, they might not actually know what they want to do, where they want to go, and they just need to come in and chat with us to sort of to figure out how this could tie into their 4-year plan. Erin's almost finished. Okay, so Erin wrapped up. I want to thank everybody again for joining us. And feel free to reach out to us if you have any additional questions. Thank you.